Give me back 27 years of what was taken away, because understand the time when my son was a baby was taken away from me. That all that time of my late 30s, all of my 40s, all of my 50s, half of my 60s, with being labeled a difficult bitch.
Back to them in 2009, and I said, please, I need you to clear my name.
You talked to him directly?
I spoke to JL when my dad died and my brother died, and I begged them. I said, I have a family. I need you to tell the world that this stuff didn't happen. And I was waiting in my heart thinking somebody will come to me one day and help me, but they didn't.
Janet Hubert is spilling the tea about all the crazy things she has had to face as a Black woman in Hollywood and Chile. It is a lot, from losing her gig as the beloved Aunt Viv in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to being blackballed in the industry and facing backlash even from her own family. Our auntie has been through a lot. Janet is now talking about how a lot of her problems started after she and Will Smith started having issues while they were filming for The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Allegedly, because of the problems she had with Will, other cast members started avoiding her, and she was eventually branded as difficult to work with. And if you know Hollywood, then you know being called difficult is like a death sentence for an actor's career. So what really went down back there, and how did Janet's career end up being derailed? Get comfortable, loves, because we're about to dive into this mess.
I lost everything. Reputation, everything. And I understand you were able to move forward, but you know those words, calling a Black woman difficult in Hollywood is the kiss of death. It's a kiss of death.
Janet Hubert started her acting career in 1981 when she made her Broadway debut in the musical The First. She had also won a scholarship to Juilliard, and she had a lot of experience on stage. After starring in a few more Broadway gigs, Janet got cast for the role of Aunt Viv in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. At the time, Janet was 34 years old, and she already had almost a decade's worth of acting experience. Now, I don't know how many of you kids watched Fresh Prince, but what you need to know is Janet was out here slaying her role. The character Aunt Viv was a tough, no-nonsense career woman, a fashion icon, a legend of her time, and Janet was able to play that character to perfection. That's why she will always be the OG Aunt Viv. Now, Janet could play her role so well, not just because she was a great actor, but also because she was kind of like Aunt Viv in real life. She approached everything with the same no-nonsense attitude that Aunt Viv had, and she always made sure she was professional in everything she did. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air crew enjoyed having Janet around because she just had a way about her that made people feel safe, you know.
I hope that, I don't know, I hope that she knows that for me as a young girl, like I saw her with a spotlight on her, you know what I mean? That's how I thought she was being represented on the show. You know, she was, in terms of beauty and, you know, Black beauty and as a young Black child, I thought she was radiant, and I thought that I thought the spotlight was on her, you know, and that was something that I wasn't used to seeing. So I hope, I don't know, I didn't get a chance to tell her that at the reunion, but if she hears that, I hope that gives her some comfort.
At least initially. For example, Tatiana Ali, who played the role of Ashley Banks, talked about how she always looked up to Janet and enjoyed watching her be Aunt Viv. However, some of the crew members soon started having issues with Janet, and their ringleader was Will Smith. The issues between Will Smith and Janet Hubert started small, but they soon grew into something so big that one person had to leave the show for the other, and we all know who that was. When Janet started working on The Fresh Prince, she was a grown 34-year-old woman with 10 years of working experience, a husband, and a mortgage. So of course, she wasn't going to allow herself to be kicked around by 22-year-old Will Smith, who was still green in the ears. The thing about Will is that even though he was young and relatively inexperienced, he was desperate for that job. Will started his Hollywood career as the other half of the rap duo, DJ Jazzy Jeff and The Fresh Prince. Will and his partners made a few dope hots and snagged 2 Grammys between 1989 and 1991. Of course, Will made a ton of money in those few years, but he burnt through the cash as fast as he got it. While spending all that money, Will somehow forgot to file his taxes, so he ended up owing the IRS over $2.8 million. And one thing about Uncle Sam, he is going to collect. So the IRS took what was left of Will's money, his cars, motorcycles, blings, basically everything valuable thing he had. Will was now broke. So his girlfriend at the time advised him to just hang around some big studios and hope someone everyone noticed him and helped his broke self. Surprisingly, that plan worked. Will ended up at Quincy Jones's home, and Benny Medina asked him to do an impromptu audition for his role, which he smashed, and that's how the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air came to be. Now, at this point, Will's rent was due. He was neck deep in debt, broke, hungry, and thirsty. So he gave the show his 110%, and the audience fell in love with him. But although Will had gotten so successful at such a young age, he was still an insecure 22-year-old who needed the approval of everyone around him. So when he cracked a joke, he expected everyone to laugh, and when he said something, he needed everyone to agree with him. But Janet was like, "Hold on now, mister, you're not my boss." That did not go down well with Will at all. When he started being sly toward Janet, other actors in the cast also started being sly towards her because nobody wanted to get on Will's wrong side. He was the star of the show. Will didn't even try to hide how much he despised Janet. In 1993, he did a radio interview where he said Janet was actually jealous of him, and she was only acting up because she wanted to have a more important role in the series. I can say straight up that Janet Hubert wanted the show to be the Aunt Viv of Bel-Air show. Then he talked about how she didn't respect him, saying, "She said once, I've been in the business for 10 years and this snotty-nosed punk comes along and gets a show. To her, I'm the Antichrist." Janet did admit that she was sometimes cranky on set, but at the time, life was really throwing her curveballs.
Your reluctance to listen to notes from, I guess, the then 21-year-old, who certainly wasn't experienced as you were, that started the friction on set?
Absolutely. And I think in the third season, my pregnancy was rough. I was having a really rough time at home. That was not a good marriage. My first marriage was not a good marriage. There was a lot of, I'm just going to say it, violence going on at home.
Mm-hmm.
She was in an abusive marriage, she was stressed out, and by the third season, she was pregnant. Sis couldn't catch a break, but because Will didn't like her and the rest of the cast thought she wasn't a team player, she was fired. Janet later talked about how she was completely blindsided by this decision because it felt like she had been working hard for years only for one decision to derail her career. Speaking to LA Times, Janet said, "I was hurt and disappointed. I'd worked hard and I never saw that coming." In another interview, she explained why she appeared so cranky to the rest of the crew. I mean, the cast had good reason to feel like Janet was killing the vibe, but if they cared so much about everyone being happy together, it just seems like they would have had someone reach out to Janet to find out if she was okay. I don't know, that's just me, but they didn't. Instead, they told Janet that if she didn't want to laugh with the cast, she had to go to her room in between sets. She said, "They told me I had to go into my dressing room in between takes because I wasn't laughing at Will's jokes." Janet even hinted that Will influenced other members of the cast to treat her roughly and that's why they didn't stick up for her when she was getting bullied. According to her, they couldn't even be bothered about her because they were too busy making money. Janet also hinted that Will might have offered the cast money to be mean to her. As far as Janet was concerned, it was Will who orchestrated her downfall and got her fired. She said, "He probably is responsible for my firing. He has a lot of clout. It's too bad that it's a black-on-black attack. I have tried not to name names. If you're going to talk, tell the truth. He has gotten me fired from the show and now he's trying to get my career snatched away from me." But then Alfonso Ribeiro, who played the role of Carlton, seemed to side with Will, saying he did not enjoy working with Janet. In 2011, he talked about how, although he enjoyed working on the set of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, he didn't really like working with Janet because she ruined the vibe every time the crew was together.
Had an absolute amazing time working with Will, with Tatiana and James and Karen, and everybody was great. First mom, not so much.
Alfonso even went as far as implying that Janet kind of went crazy at some point and started going off on everyone unprovoked.
Basically, at the end of the day, it was crazy. I did not curse. I don't know if that's in my contract, but I did not curse. I went... She went nuts, long story short, and there were days when we were on the set and she would literally go off on people, and it got to a point by the time the second season came around where we're like, this is unacceptable. That's how much we loved each other, and she, at that point, ruined that, and she made it very difficult for us to work.
And he was like Janet was the mom on the ugly set, and the set became better when she was no longer on it.
Yeah, that was the mom on the ugly set. Because like the set changed, it got really nice. Like all of a sudden, like what I found really interesting was that, all of a sudden it was a new house. Like doors didn't exist anymore. It was like, oh, lovely staircase. Where did that exist? How did you make that happen?
But one thing about Janet is that she does not stand back and watch while people are throwing dirt on her. In 2017, Alfonso posted this picture of the Fresh Prince crew with the caption, "Always amazing to spend an afternoon with my Fresh Prince family. Wishing that James Avery was still with us to make this complete." Janet reacted to that photo by calling out Alfonso and Will in a Facebook post. I know the media dude Alfonso Ribeiro has posted his so-called reunion photo. Folks keep telling me about it. He was always the behind wipe for Will. Basically, she was saying Alfonso was kissing Will's behind rather than having a mind of his own. She also called out Will and Alfonso later, saying they planned to get her fired from the show. My departure was planned for a long time. There will never be a reunion of the Fresh Prince. Will Smith and Alfonso destroyed a 20-year career with untruths. I got slammed.
Yes, people are saying it was personal. Yeah, it's a little personal because I'm not gonna let Will Smith hang other actors the way he hung me. I can't sit by and watch other people jeopardized the way I was jeopardized.
In a 2013 interview with The Griot, Janet then spilled the tea on why she felt Will and Alfonso were going out of their way to throw dirt on her name. During a Red Table Talk, Janet finally confronted Will about the way he treated her all those years ago and how she was literally on her own with no job and a baby to care for. "When I left the show, I had this new baby and no one. My family disowned me, Hollywood disowned me. My family said, 'You ruined our name.' And I wasn't unprofessional on set. I just stopped talking to everybody because I didn't know who to trust because I had been banished, and they said it was you who banished me." At this point, Will agreed that he did treat her horribly all those years ago, saying the reason why he did that was because he needed her approval, and when he didn't get it, he lashed out. Now, in Will's defense, he had a very difficult childhood with an abusive father who used to put his hands on him, his siblings, and his mother. He also had many insecurities, and because he saw Janet as a mother figure, he wanted her approval badly. But here Janet was, dealing with grown woman stuff, not having the time or the energy to laugh at his jokes.
Everything was a threat to me.
Why was I a threat?
Not you, the world. I was so driven by fear and jokes and comedy and all of that.
Yeah, you were live.
He also said he saw her as a threat because he was in a position where he badly needed to be on the show, and she was threatening his gig by making him look like a spoiled brat, and he was mad about that, so he felt he could retaliate by turning the cast against her and getting her fired. I don't know, y'all, but Will really dropped the ball with that one. What's worse is that another reason why Will and Janet didn't get along is that she felt since he was the star of the show, he could help the cast negotiate better pay like the cast of Friends did. But when she reached out to him about his, he just told her it wasn't his business.
And what we didn't know, many of us didn't know, was that Will was actually given a producer role. And I asked him about this on camera, which he didn't air. But we didn't know that he had the right to give us notes and, you know.
Later, she found out that Will had actually been made a producer on the show, and he definitely was in a position to help the cast negotiate a better salary. He didn't want to or didn't care enough. Now, you might think, oh, but Will was just misunderstood, blah, blah. But check this. Other people who have worked with Will in the past have also said he bullied them on set. One example is Paul Rodriguez, who worked with Will on the set of the 2001 biopic Ali. According to Paul Rodriguez, Will started fighting with him over something he didn't even know about, and he turned what was supposed to be Paul's breakthrough role into a sad and painful memory for him. Paul told The Sun that he and Will were friends before the fame. However, out of the blue, Will starts treating him horribly, which also makes the rest of the cast start treating him horribly. It was so bad that even when the cast had a reunion 20 years later, nobody invited or even informed Paul. After he made me the butt of all his jokes and nasty remarks on Ali, people didn't want to hang out with me no more. It was like the word got out and I had leprosy all of a sudden. Paul said this completely derailed his career and he never recovered from it. That movie was meant to be one of the biggest and most wonderful breaks in my career, but he made it a nightmare and it all went downhill from there. I was dropped by my management company and I couldn't get an agent worth a damn. So it's not difficult to believe Will did all those things to Janet.
I could not do a 30-year celebration of this show and not celebrate you. Celebrate your contribution to this show, celebrate your contribution to my life, you know, and...
Come here, you.
But after almost 30 years, they finally decided to bury the hatchet and moved on. During that red table session, Janet and Will cried, hugged it out, and ended their almost 3-decade feud. Janet later said she saw how much Will had grown and she could forgive him because he seemed genuine. And I guess she must have been really touched by Will swallowing his pride and reaching out to her because she previously swore on her life that she would never be in the same room as Will again if he didn't apologize. In 2011, Janet told TMZ, "There will never be a reunion as I will never do anything with a guy like Will Smith. He is still an egomaniac and has not grown up. This constant reunion thing will never ever happen in my lifetime unless there is an apology," which he doesn't know the word for. But Janet did attend the 2020 reunion and everyone looked happy and well-oiled. But although Janet said she had forgiven Will, she admitted that she was blackballed and she may never recover from that. Allegedly, Will spread the word that Janet was difficult to work with. And y'all know what happens when a black woman becomes tagged as difficult to work with. Just ask Monique. You see, when that beef with Will started and the network wanted to let her go, they didn't just outrightly fire her. Oh no, they gave her an insulting offer to work for 10 weeks for a fraction of what she would typically get paid.
Let go, or as a matter of fact, you said you were not fired. You didn't resign.
Yeah, we need to clear that up because I know Alfonso has gone around telling people, well, we fired her because she went nuts and things like that, which is a crock of crap. And I'm so happy that it has been dispelled. But no, they offered me 10 weeks of work. They said, and you can't work anywhere else. And as I said on the red table, it was designed to put me in my place. And then they told me that you have to go to your room. You are barred from the set when you are done. Now I'm pregnant. I'm 37. I'm a grown woman. And I'm saying, you're telling me that I, a grown woman, got to go to my room in between takes and stay in that room because I'm not laughing at Will's jokes?
According to Janet, they did this just to put her in her place and get her to behave. But Janet said she had to choose between her dignity and the scraps they were offering her, and she chose her dignity, so she actually left the show by herself and she wasn't fired. Apart from her beef with Will Smith, which played the biggest role in derailing her career, Janet also had to deal with other issues, like colorism. Janet has talked about how she had to deal with a lot of colorism, especially from the black community, saying she might have been treated better in this whole beef with Will Smith if she had been light-skinned.
Everybody loves a witch, everybody loves and everybody loves, and especially black women, and especially dark-skinned black women. I always thought that if I were a lighter-skinned woman, they would have been nicer. Even my own community might have been nicer if I were a yellow woman, or I passed the paper bag.
This might be a reach, but we did see that colorism play out when Janet got fired from the Fresh Prince and was replaced with a lighter-skinned woman. I mean, no disrespect to Daphne Reid and her talent, but you gotta admit it's hella weird. Interestingly, Tatiana Ali has also talked about experiencing colorism in Hollywood. In an interview, Tatiana talked about some weird microaggressions she has had to deal with in the past and how that affects her career as a black woman.
As colorism conversations have been going on for a long time, and they're very delicate. It's hard to have that conversation like out in the open when sisters haven't had that conversation, together. And I've even been involved kind of unknowingly in projects that, they're going to talk about colorism, but then at the same time they like further divide us, and like continue to rank you as like, I did it.
But after all this, Janet's biggest beef is with the press, especially the black press. Janet said that while she was going through all that, her own people were the first to throw her to the wolves, running wild stories about her and trying to make her look like a witch. She said when she was winning and doing all these amazing things, they never reported on them.
I'm angry more at the press. I'm angry more at the black community who threw dirt on my grave. I've done amazingly good things in the past, but they loved to pick up on dirt.
But as soon as it was time to throw dirt on her name, they had front row seats. According to Janet, she is still waiting on her apology from the press.
I wanted an apology from the black press. And I feel that I'm very owed an apology from the black press. Because you labeled me witch, you murdered me, but I didn't die.
And this bullying didn't only come from the press. During that Red Table session, Janet talked about how Black people in her community took sides with Will, and because of that, they started bullying her and her child, sending her death threats and doxing her. Janet said, "They beat my son. Somebody smashed a cookie in my son's face and said, 'Your mother is a bee.' People send me hateful Instagrams. 'Aren't you dead yet? I love Will. Why don't you just die?' God forbid anyone says they don't like the precious Fresh Prince of Bel-Air." Girl, this drama needs to have its own series because it is a lot. Fans have also dropped their 2 cents on this beef, with one commenting, "Everybody called her bitter. I've always believed her. I always thought he was arrogant. Glad he finally admitted his wrongs." Another person said, "Janet is the best Aunt Viv. Her shoes were too big to fill. She had poise, she was strong, stylish, and she was the balance of the family. Love you, Janet." But now I want to know what y'all think about Janet's struggles. Did she take the beef too far, or was there something she could have done differently? Share your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.